listening to SuperPower Mommas on the SuperPower Up podcast, the show that embraces the art of soulful parenting.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Laura Greco, your host at SuperPower Mommas, and I am so excited to cover the topic that we have for today, which is fit and fabulous, and yes, still a mom. Isn't that great? That you when we think about being fit and fabulous, it seems like such a wonderful place to be, and yet often that kind of feeling is just not what we experience as moms, especially new moms. So are you that mom who is doing it all? You're raising children, caring for all the needs of the household. Are you that mom that's also carpooling and taking children to all kinds of activities? Or maybe you're working from home or working outside the home. Whatever it is you're doing, are you also that mom that when asked, how are you, you say, fine, when really and secretly inside you're feeling overwhelmed and exhausted and just wondering, when you're going to feel like you're happy in your life in a way that is more consistent. Maybe you're showing up as a parent who's feeling frustrated and exhausted and like snapping at your children or doing the things that you would normally not be doing had you felt restful. Well, that is why I'm so excited to have with us Dr. Orlena Kerek. She is she's a doctor. She's a pediatric doctor who turned to be health coach. She teaches busy moms like you to lead a healthy lifestyle so that they can feel fit and fabulous. And I'd like to add, on her website, she says this. She says, I live to share my message with you, your listeners. I love to share this. She says, I teach busy moms to, to prioritize their own self-care and to lead a healthy life so that they can be fit and fabulous. And I'll just add, and show up for their children in a way that you really want to. So welcome with us, Orlena.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
I'm so excited you're here.
Me too. Me too. Spain.
I know. That's what I was about to say. I read your bio. You're all the way from, or on your website, you're in Spain now, but you've had more than that for a journey. And you also are a mom of 4 children.
Yes, 4 lovely, boisterous, very energetic children.
There you go. And I'm also a mom of 4 myself, so I can totally picture what that feels like. And yet, whether you have 1 or 4 or 5 or 6, right, there's a commonality for all of us. As moms, we really want to show up for our children in a way that's powerful and supportive, right? So tell me, what superpower do you carry in your existence as a mom and as a human being yourself?
Well, Laura, I have to say, I have been thinking about this for a couple of days because I knew you were going to ask me. And it's a really tricky question. And I think partly because none of us like to say, hey, this is my superpower. So right. My superpower is being fit and fabulous. And I say that for 2 reasons. Partly because I have really worked out how to look after myself. Mm-hmm. And that gives me the energy to show up like we're talking about. I used to be that mother who snapped, and I'll tell you more about that later on. But it gives me the energy to show up to my kids and be that parent that I want to be. Now, I'm not a perfect parent. Of course I'm not. But I have the energy to give them. And then the second thread of that is that it also helps me to teach my kids about healthy living. So I think fit and fabulous is my superpower.
I love it. I love it. It sounds so happy and energetic. And sometimes we can get so bogged down that hearing that often, even making that a mantra almost, would be like a fabulous way to live or start our day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's about being selfish in a not selfish way, if that makes sense. It's about putting myself first so that I can be the most helpful to other people.
Exactly. So when we think of this fit and fabulous, you sort of touched on this and gave reasons in two ways, but I would love for you to expand a little bit about how these superpowers have assisted you with your children.
Yeah, totally. So I'll touch a little bit on my story, if I may. And we talked about
Sure.
this.
Mm-hmm.
I have 4 children, and my number 3 turned out to be twins. So number 3 was really 3 and 4. So my oldest was only 4.5 when my twins were born. So I had 4 children under 5, and they are 4. Well, you know what kids are like. Like, I think it's tough parenting. I was used to walking into a busy A&E department and everyone would do what I said. And I had kids and they learned this word no very early on. And yeah, life was, difficult and stressful. And there was a period of time when we were sort of, basically surviving rather than thriving. Mm. And my husband also got unwell with a stress-related illness. And, I could see myself just not being that mother I wanted to be. I wanted to be that fun, amazing mother who knew how to sort of, bring my kids up in a well-mannered way, but in such a way that, a bit like Mary Poppins. I'm sure you've seen Mary Poppins. That's who I essentially aspired to be in my dreams. But it all came naturally. But the reality wasn't like that. And the reality was more, me getting frustrated. It was a battle to get my kids into the bath. And then it was a battle to get them out of the bath. And there came this point when, I just realized that I wasn't showing up how I wanted to show up. And my husband was unwell. And that was really the turning point. And actually, I did do an online course, which was a parenting course. But it was really about focusing on me and taking care of me. It was really about the emotions that children have, but really about balancing my own emotions. And I think that really just led on this journey of discovery and amazement. And it really boils down to self-care. And it really means that I have the energy to turn up. Now, as a doctor, I also see all the health benefits of all of these things. And that's the work I do now with other people.
Right, which is, you just, listeners, you just heard like an introduction basically to what we're going to talk about when we get back from a break. And so I'm going to take us there first, but I have to say you have an accent that goes right along with the Mary Poppins.
Yes, I'm from the UK. You can tell with my accent. I've got a British accent.
Yeah, it's living in Spain. That's an interesting story, I'm sure, too. So before we leave for the break, though, would you please share your website or how you would like people to find you?
Yes, I have a podcast myself, which is called Fit and Fabulous, and it's about health and living healthily and having lots of energy. And my website is drorlena.com. So that's DR. And then Orlena, ORLENA.com. And I have to spell things out because my parents gave me this beautiful, very strange name that nobody has ever heard of before.
It's pretty, though. It's very pretty. Okay, so thank you, everyone. And please hold on. We will be right back from our break. We are speaking with Dr. Orlena Kerek, and we are talking about Fit and Fabulous. And yes, still a mom. Hold on.
Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Rekla, Executive Director of SuperPower Experts, and we want to thank each of you for making SuperPower Up the #1 podcast network for personal development and spiritual growth. Because people like you have the courage to say that mindfulness, healthy living, disrupting reality, the pursuit of consciousness, responsible entrepreneurship, and radical parenting matter. We now amass over 1 million downloads monthly in more than 90 countries. Our numbers keep growing because there are far more people willing to live divergently than mass media wants to acknowledge. For you, the change makers, the light bearers, the way showers, we say thank you. If you're ready to take the next step in your evolution, go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower quiz. And as Neva Lee Rekla, our youngest podcaster, likes to remind us, remember, we all have superpowers and we can change the world.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I'm Laura Greco, and we're talking with Dr. Orlena about Fit and Fabulous, and yes, still a mom. And before we went on the break, she began to tell us her story of having 4 children and how life was really spinning out for her prior to a life change. Now, you are a pediatric doctor who has turned to be a health coach. What caused that transition? Is that part of that story you just shared?
Well, some of it is. I always wanted to travel and live abroad. Ironically, I went into medicine partly to travel. And I've now done the traveling bit, but I'm no longer working as a clinical doctor. So I moved to Spain in 2011. And essentially, I accidentally gave up my career. I thought I would just be able to work here because we're in the European Union. Mm-hmm. And that was also quite a trauma for me in terms of losing my identity. And, on the outside, I was functioning perfectly well. But on the inside, there was just this sort of sea of discontent. And it would just surface up. And I think it was partly struggling with having 4 young children, and they were picky eaters, and me wanting a career which I didn't really have. Mm-hmm. And, found myself in the situation where we'd moved to live the dream life, and yet I wasn't really living the dream life. So I did do some work with helping children of picky eaters. That was what I originally started doing. But then essentially I realized the problem with picky children is really and truly you want to teach children not to be picky children because of health reasons. You want them to eat healthily. Now, not everybody wants that, but that was the reason I wanted to teach people to eat healthily.
Right.
And I realized that one of the best ways, or the best way to teach your children anything is to demonstrate it yourself. And that basically means that people who eat healthily themselves, their children will grow up eating healthily. And so really and truly, it's more important to teach mums this, because quite often you have mums who aren't eating particularly healthily and they want their kids to eat healthily. And that's a really difficult thing to do. So actually now I spend my energy teaching mums to look after themselves and to eat healthily. And then that trickles down and they just by default teach their kids as well.
Exactly, because it's just always there, right? It's a habit.
Exactly. So much of it is a habit. And if you think about the way so many people eat, normally it's because of how they ate when they were kids. And, if you can get that right as a parent and to teach your children healthy eating, which is it's the same. Healthy eating for children is the same as healthy eating for adults. And if you can get that right and show them this is healthy eating, then they will eat healthily as kids.
Yeah. And I know when I was raising my children, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but what I would do, because they were picky, is I would present a food, different choices, like, a meat, a vegetable, salad or whatever. But what I would do is if they really didn't want it or didn't think they liked it, I would just require that they take one bite. And then the next time I served it, they would take one bite. And, eventually they began to like the food because it was no longer, they just took a bite,
Yes. Now that definitely works for some children. And the key to this is really understanding your own child. And as you have clearly demonstrated, it worked for you. You knew it worked for you. But the thing about picky eating is it's a huge, great spectrum. So some people have, mild picky eating. They may not like a few things. But on the really sort of severe spectrum, you've got kids who really have a very limited diet. And those are often very anxious children.
Yeah, okay.
And when you start getting into this try one bite of something that they consider to be like a plate of worms, then they start getting scared and anxious. And then you get a power struggle. But you can see that power struggle. So that's what I talk about, understand your child. So right. I have 2 children who are like that. And it does become really frustrating because you try that, just try one bite and they go, no. And suddenly you've got this really stressful situation that you don't really want to have. Exactly. Whereas, I have my daughter, if I say to her, you have to eat some vegetables, and I know they're vegetables that she'll like, and then she will eat them. So it is different for different children.
Right. Which is an interesting thing, because the power struggle is not what you want.
Exactly.
Or otherwise the food becomes an issue rather than just an enjoyable pleasure.
Exactly.
So I noticed on your website, and I'd like to touch on this, especially in regard to, I talk a lot about moms having the autonomy of caring for themselves, how important that is to their children and to themselves. And you have on your website the 4 pillars to healthy living. I'd love for you to expand a little bit on how that all ties in with what we've been talking about.
Yes, and I totally agree with you about this point of autonomy. And one of my favorite quotes is, "The best thing a mother can give her children is her own happiness."
I love that.
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful quote. And it's something that I see a lot of mothers don't take on board. We're so used to looking after children, which is normal, because let's face it, when you're handed a baby, they need 24-hour care.
Absolutely.
And we get so used to giving them that care and putting other people first. And they obviously grow up and become more autonomous themselves, but we get used to constantly putting ourselves last. And actually, at some stage, you have to go, okay, I need to look after myself.
Right.
And when you do that, that's when you get all that, when you actually truly do that, you get all the energy and you get your life is fit and fabulous. So the 4 pillars that I talk about, and you can divide the pillars up however you like. Different people say there are 8 pillars or 7 pillars. I divide it into 4 pillars. And number 1 is nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is going to sleep. And there has been so much research on sleep in the last 10 to 15 years. When I was at medical school, people didn't really understand exactly what sleep did. They knew that it was when our body fixes and when children grow, but we didn't understand those systems that actually and how it all works. And now people know far more about that.
Mm-hmm.
So pillar number 3 is exercise. And this is where you're going to actually feel fit and fabulous. You're going to get fit and you're going to feel fabulous. And lots of people say, oh my goodness, I don't have time to exercise and I'm too tired to exercise. And I say, oh, you're doing it wrong. I love swimming, but I go swimming when I feel tired. And when I feel tired and grumpy, my husband says, you need to go swimming. It's about giving yourself energy. And really and truly, when you get into exercise and an exercise that you enjoy, it does give you energy. It's not about taking energy from you.
Yeah.
The last pillar is quite a big, broad pillar, but I lump it all together. And it's about emotions, emotional well-being, and our stress levels. And all of that, I think, goes together. And it's really interesting. And we touched on emotions earlier, but how our emotions work and how quite often we're not aware of our emotions. And I think where we want to get to with our emotions is not that we can control our emotions, but that we aren't carried away in this spiral of emotions. So I like to see it as, think of yourself going down quite a busy, quick river. And you're being carried on this current and you're being tossed from side to side. But as you learn about emotions, it's like building yourself a raft. So instead of being thrown from side to side, you manage to go round the curves with the water, if that makes sense, rather than, being thrown this way and that way.
Wow. As you were talking, something came up for me. I mean, those are actually fabulous pillars. They are so solid. Like, I can see why you call them pillars, because they really are what hold us up in general as people, not to mention moms. But as you were talking about the sleep, I just wanted to highlight and maybe draw some secrets that you might have. So, moms often complain about not getting enough sleep because they're up with children, or, what kind of solutions do you suggest on things like that?
Well, I have to say, I think it is really, really difficult for mothers.
Yes.
There have been studies that say that, for the first 5 years of your child's life, you aren't going to get good quality sleep.
Okay.
And, the bottom line is you have to look after your child. When your child is a baby, now I recommend breastfeeding. Mm-hmm. Not everybody can breastfeed, but the vast majority of people can, and some people choose not to. If you do breastfeed, you do get some kind of hormonal protection, which does help you not feel quite so tired.
Right.
But I think as well, this just being aware that if we get 8 hours sleep, a day, that helps us to feel good. And, it's this idea of prioritizing things. So you may not be able to get all of those at night time, between whatever time you go to bed, 10:30 and 6:30, because your child is keeping you up. But if you can have a nap in the daytime, and you can say, do you know what, actually sleep is important to me. And particularly when you have a really young baby, you can go, but I'm going to have a nap in the daytime. Now, obviously not everybody can do that all the time, but just this idea, 8 hours of sleep is what I'm aiming for, is a big improvement on what a lot of people get.
Yeah, I remember that I would find myself needing to take at least a 10-15 minute nap. It energized me enough to carry on for the day. And to your point, if anyone's on the fence about nursing, I found nursing very helpful for another reason, is that when the night feedings were happening, all I had to do was keep the lights out, go nurse, and roll back in bed. Like I didn't have to fix anything, I just rolled in and rolled out.
Yes, exactly.
It was just, and I did it. I mean, I did it for health reasons as well, but I did it also for that because it was just so much simpler.
Yes, and I breastfed twins, and it was logistically difficult at times, but it is possible.
Yeah. Oh, that might be challenging at night for you who have twins. Oh my goodness.
Well, I have to say, 3 of my children did not sleep very well, and one of them was a dream sleeper. Unfortunately, her twin was not. So there you go.
So you still had one.
Yes.
Yeah. But just expanding on this, you brought out the 4 pillars. So this is you wanted to expand more on the idea of why, you felt yourself snapping, you were feeling de-energized basically in your parenting and in your life in general. Your husband became unwell, which I hope he's doing better now, as you mentioned. But what I want to ask you is, what happened? What symptoms did you experience where you finally said, I've got to change this?
Well, I think for me, it was really this kind of feeling tired and not feeling like myself. So when I looked back and I think the other thread is that we often lose ourselves as mothers. So you kind of get on with life and then you wake up one day and go, where is that 18-year-old girl who was full of energy and full of life and had so many exciting things she wanted to do with her life? Where is that person? Mm-hmm. And I couldn't see that person, or rather I could see that person, but what that person was thinking about was, what am I going to cook for the kids to dinner tonight? And the exact thought went like this: what am I going to cook for the kids for dinner tonight that they're not going to even eat or touch anyhow, and they're going to push away and go yuck? And I just felt so frustrated with that kind of thought. And I could see that, my kids were thriving. They were thriving. It wasn't like, I was a negligent mother, but I just felt I wasn't giving them the experience that I wanted them to have. I wasn't giving them a nurturing, loving environment. Now, of course, I was giving them all of that, but I was giving them that with this tired, overwhelmed person who was sleep deprived and didn't have that energy. And I think the reality is then when you have children and they have big emotions, and those big emotions, we mirror emotions. So your child is having a tantrum and we get cross with that. And when your batteries are low, you are drawn into that big emotion pretty quickly. Whereas when you're on fully charged batteries and looking after yourself, your children may be having these big emotions, but you aren't as affected by it. Now, obviously, they can wear you down over a period of time, but your default is, I'm more centered. I can stand here and I can help them with those emotions in a way that I want to, without being drawn into the battle. It's not like, when you have 2 children who are arguing and then you try and sort it out and suddenly there's 3 people arguing and you think, yeah, this isn't really what I want to achieve.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because you think about this, we want peace, right? We want peace. And yet, how do we respond when we're tired and chaos is happening? we yell, we get angry, we get involved in, like you said, in the argument in some way. So we're actually trying to gain peace through basically warring with ourselves or others.
Exactly. And the irony of me shouting, "Stop shouting," was not lost on me. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. Like, you're not doing this in a constructive way.
Right.
And it really had to change. And I really think that change is an internal change. And it's a change about thinking about your emotions, but it all goes together. You can't just think about your emotions and not care for your body. And equally, you can't care for your body and not think about your emotions. It's the whole package. And I would add, you have to want to enjoy it and make it fun, because it's not about, I think talk about nutrition. Nutrition isn't about, for example, giving up cake for a week. It's about finding a way of feeding yourself and your family that you love and enjoy all the time. So it's about getting balance right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think this is really key in the whole scheme of things, because you want to develop the habit of it so that your children carry on with that habit of it.
Exactly.
And honestly, if we're all eating well, we're all going to feel better, which means we're all going to show up closer to our higher selves. But I wanted to highlight this too, because there came that time where you thought about that 18-year-old. So you took time for introspect, to really search in yourself, like, okay, well, I'm not neglecting my children. I'm still serving them, but am I serving them powerfully? Am I serving them in a way that will truly support them as they go out into the world to be whoever they're to be, And I have to say that's really a key and important for all of us, to take that time for reflection, and then make it, not to judge, but to make adjustments or to celebrate, right? When we're feeling good about it.
Yes. And I think it comes back to that quote, the best thing a mother can give her children is her happiness. Because if you aren't happy, if you truly aren't happy, if you're struggling internally, your children are going to see that, and they're going to pick up on that. And that is going to be their normal. So if they are brought up with a mother who is struggling with emotions. Now, I'm not saying that, if you have problems, oh my goodness, you've ruined your child. Of course, that's not what I'm saying. But they will pick up on those things. Whereas if you can get to that place of, I'm happy and I love life, and this is how we enjoy life, your children will pick that up, and that's how they will start seeing life as well.
Right. And let's just bring out the extra point that happiness does not mean perfection. Right. Happiness is what we, because we're experiencing a life that lifts us and we feel light, but that also means we have tools to navigate the times that are more challenging. It does not mean that we're perfectly living.
Yes, absolutely. And equally with emotions, when I talk about happiness, I don't mean we should never feel the negative emotions. As I talked about earlier, it's about not allowing those negative emotions to spin us into this spiral. So I talk about an upward spiral and a downward spiral, and we want to have that upward spiral. And you know what I'm talking about, in like, you wake up on Saturday morning and everyone's perhaps a little bit grumpy because they went to bed late on Friday, and then someone snaps at one person and another person snaps. They have this typical picture of, the dad kicks the wife kicks the child kicks another child. Yes. And the child kicks the dog, who kicks the cat, and you can just see this going down. And that's a negative spiral. And you can see it play out. I see it play out in my family. And of course, we're not perfect. But what I want to do is take that and turn it the other way up. So it's a positive spiral. And it's not an easy thing to do. So when my child is grumpy, instead of me grumping back at them, then I can turn to them from a place of love and happiness and help them. And then they, in turn, can go and help somebody else, or at least not pull the other person down.
I think this really speaks to the words that I usually use, which is, what children really need from us other than happiness is, and we can only do this if we are coming from a place of feeling peaceful and within ourselves, is to truly see them, to truly hear them, and to truly appreciate them as a person. to love them for what they are. And by holding up these 4 pillars that you teach, that is where we can come into that space of really loving our children from that perspective.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say that, self-worth is within that pillar of emotion, emotion. And that once we have self-worth, and I think self-worth is a really interesting one, because I have this theory that actually the vast majority of people secretly suffer with low self-esteem and low self-worth.
Yes.
Because we are always looking for external things to validate our worth, whereas actually we are all just worthy just by living. We don't look at babies and go, well, that one's going to be a banker and that one's not, so that one's more worthy than that one. We take all babies and say they're all worthy, but we don't apply the same measures to adults. Right. We have this, monetary value, or what you have achieved and what you haven't achieved. And that really isn't what self-worth is about. Self-worth is just about, I am a human and I have as much right to be here as anybody else. Mm-hmm. And once we can really internalize that, then we can also teach our children to internalize that.
Love it. So let me ask you this. What do you see your work that you're doing? Like, do you have a big picture?
I have lots of big pictures.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the things I do, so I work with people one-on-one, and I also have a course that I do, which is like a 2-week nutritional reboot. And I would love to reach more people. But I also would really love, where I am in Spain, to have a community center and teach people, not as part of my business, as it were, but just teach people there. And I would love to do retreats as well. So I have so many ideas that I want to do.
Yeah.
And it's just about implementing them all and working there slowly. We're just about to do our house up, actually. And I'm hoping that we're going to do it up in such a way that in years to come, when my children have left home, I will be able to have retreats here and have people come from all over the world to talk about all of these kind of things that we've been talking on, and talk about, I think for me, the word is transformation as well. Mm-hmm. I think one thing that we haven't really touched on is, we have, but it's this idea of taking that first step. And that very, very first step is just a mindset step. And it just goes like this. Yes, I am worth doing it. I'm worth looking after myself. And I'm going to take the first step of physically doing it.
Love that. I love that. That to me is like a tool. It's like another mantra, right? Because even your, your statement from the website, that's our title, Fit and Fabulous. And yes, still a mom. That fit and fabulous to me is something, if we can wake up and say that in the morning, I am fit and fabulous, what a great way to start your day.
Yes, absolutely. And, I always say, in the last few years when I've been doing this work, I have created my dream life, and I am a lady of luxury and I live this amazing life. Now, on another level, I live a totally mundane life. I look after children, I do laundry, I, do my work commitments. But you know what? I get to go swimming. I go swimming twice a week. Isn't that just amazing? And I get to do yoga and I get to do Tai Chi. So, I do wake up and go, wow, it's really exciting. I've got swimming today.
Yes,
and I have my 3-minute sauna, which I totally love.
I love that. Before we end, we're coming close to the end, but I really want to ask you, is there something that we haven't discussed today that you would like to point out, or maybe a tool that moms can begin to implement right away?
If I was thinking about tools, so I think in the big picture, there's nothing big that we haven't covered. Right. The one tool that I really love when we're thinking about emotions, other than this, okay, I need to take the first step, which is to say I am worth it and I can start looking after myself. Right. One thing that I have found really useful for when my children are, how can I put this, having big emotions and I'm feeling myself getting triggered, is I do this little karate chop thing, which is just you take your hands and you just sort of bang them together. And I like to breathe in and out. I think breath work is really important. So if you focus on your breathing, and it sounds like nothing, like I'm just taking 5 breaths, Now, you may need to take 5 breaths, you may need to take 10, you may need to take 15.
Yes.
But it's a start, and it takes your focus off the anger that you're feeling or the overwhelm that you're feeling. And so I do this karate chop, and I breathe slowly, and I say, choose love, choose love, choose love.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes close my eyes, and I train my children to do this. Now, my children may or may not do this, but we do practice it.
Mm-hmm.
But the really important thing is for me to not get triggered. The amount of times that I can turn up without getting triggered is much better. And every time I do that, I'm teaching my children to also turn up in a calm and quiet way. You can tell we have quite a lot of big emotions in our hands. But I think that's kids. And I think the best thing we can do is just be calm and quiet with them.
Yes. I used to be told that, all this noise is going on with the girls, and there's Laura in the middle, quietly talking, getting everything all calmed down. But it's true. And just to your point about breathing, like, we know there's so many physical health benefits to taking that breath, but I also love how doing that brings our crazy mind, of respond or reacting to the situation back to responding, because it lets our heart and our head, our mind connect, and it brings it back down.
Yes.
And more grounded, it's more grounded and more neutral.
We haven't mentioned meditation, actually, but meditation is a very useful tool, and it goes hand in hand with self-awareness. So I think one of the big steps, the first step that you have to take, or the second step, because the first step is deciding that you're going to change something. And then the second step is becoming aware of the thing that you want to change. So that could be, big emotions, or it could be how you feel, or it could be how you eat. It doesn't matter what it is, but the first step is self-awareness. And one very useful tool is meditation.
Very, very excellent. Thank you so much for joining us, and all your listeners for being here. Dr. Orlena, please again share where people can find you and your fabulous 4 pillars.
Thank you very much. My podcast is Fit and Fabulous, and my website is drorlena, DRORLENA.com.
Aw, so thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And until next time, big hugs.
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower Quiz today.